Hey, why don't we get started here? Because I am on a time crunch. Just so happens that it is my wife's first tennis match of the season, and I will be in a lot of trouble if I don't actually show up. So, welcome to today's webinar, 5 Strategies to Making Your Behavioral Research Findings Actionable. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world today. We have a couple hundred people actually signed up, though we'll see how many people show. But that's okay. Listen, don't worry about taking a lot of notes. This is being recorded. I will be sending this recording to you as well as the deck itself. So let's first talk about why I even kind of got in this idea of actionability. And really what happened, it all started about 2 months ago. I was on a call where I was having a really large client, or soon to be client, hopefully, called me, and we're discussing a RFP for research. And this massive insurance company, the head of insights there, probably some of you know this person, if you knew the company. And they were talking about how this person did about $500,000 or $600,000 of research just on 2 studies in 2023. They did a big, massive shopper segmentation, and they also did a shopper journey map. The idea is they're trying to increase, the penetration of their brand for insurance. And during the conversation, the gentleman said that after doing all this research, he felt really good about the insights. And towards the end of the year, the CMO, his direct line or his direct boss, called him into a meeting, and it said, thank you so much for doing the research, but said that the insights were a bit, for both studies, were superficial or maybe surface level insights in her account, as well as they weren't very actionable. And so if you follow me on LinkedIn, I've been talking about actionability because I'm trying to understand this idea a little better. And so what he came to me with was this problem. And he said, I need to go deeper. And that's why we're going to talk about behavioral sciences. If you're in this research webinar, you're probably in the behavioral insights field. If not, I'm going to talk a little about behavioral insights for sure. But he was saying, I think I need behavioral insights because those are actionable insights. And I need to make sure that we have a way of bringing these insights to life. And so what that did for me anyways, is it brought me to a model that I picked up from the Consulting Bible by Alan Weiss. And it dawned on me, this is an issue for all of us, actually. So on one axis, we have the application of expertise, which is the smarter I am, the more skills I have, I can move up that axis. Or we have this other axis on the horizontal axis, which is the application or the processes you use to get your ideas adopted. And what it dawned on me here was that, first off, we all basically want to be at the top here, right? A collaborator, a partner, maybe a consultant, whether you are in the inside of a brand company or maybe you're a consultant, a supplier out there. But generally, you want to be highly trusted so that you can get your insights adopted and hopefully do great things for your clients. Now, what's interesting about when I think about the marketing research industry in particular is we focus a lot of time on money and expertise and getting our insights out quickly. So we really focus a lot on that vertical axis, right? And I would say that traditional research, our traditional methodologies, probably for most bring us here. We are counselors, right? So what we're doing here is we are providing great expertise into our brands. And then all of a sudden, we're kind of seen as counselors. We can help brands grow. And if you do a lot of great, maybe technology-based research, maybe data mining, or if you're in the behavioral economics space, hopefully you are an expert witness if that's all you do. You bring great expertise to your company. However, are you truly a partner, or do they rely on you for those critical meetings? And then that's kind of where you stand. And what dawned on me is I think the whole industry of insights is really focused on expertise, how to become smarter, faster, cheaper, etc. But we're not focusing on the application of our insights to help our brand managers, to help our business colleagues actually grow. And I kind of verified this when I went to the 2023 Grit Business and Innovation Report. If you want to download this report, they have tons of reports for years and years. They've been collecting data. And you'll see here that the priorities, project priorities for insight success. This is thousands of insights professionals ranking what is important for a successful research project. And the very first thing that comes to the top is providing results executives can act on. That sounds actionable to me. Second one, making impactful recommendations. Yep, that means actionability. Third, ensuring work aligns with business objectives. Yep, you should be doing that. That's actionability. Effective storytelling so that my ideas will be adopted. Check. I mean, the top 4 things that make a project successful all have nothing to do with the insights, really. It's much more about how can they be applied internally. And if you even look at the very bottom here, applying innovative research methods is a far distant, third, fourth, fifth place, as well as generating measurable ROI. So the reason why I wanted to do was I started thinking about this problem about actionability, especially in the behavioral sciences space, when there's so many people out there that still are trying to understand what exactly is behavioral research and behavioral science research. And so what I did was I went backward in time. I've been doing this for about 25 years, and I picked out some of the best studies I've worked on and some that I kind of maybe messed up a bit. And I tried to come up with some ideas that you can implement in your company, maybe your brand, your consulting firm, to help make your insights actionable. Now, I'm not expecting that you'll do the exact same things, but it's the principles that I'm going to show you. And I'm going to tell you a few stories along the way. So the very first strategy I want to talk about is follow a behavioral model. And I figured this out when I was actually working inside the client. I was a director of shopper insights at PepsiCo. So this is probably around 2010. So you can tell my age now, not just the gray beard, but also when I was working at PepsiCo as a director of shopper insights. And really what I was doing is I was leading insights for Frito-Lay. And here's the situation. We were trying to drive convenience store sales, chips inside convenience stores. And people were really bypassing the aisle. And what they were doing is they were going back then for these 2 hot dogs for $1. So I'm just getting introduced to behavioral sciences, and I read about this study where blinking lights are very annoying, right? So, just imagine if my hand here is a blinking light, you already know right now that blinking lights can be very annoying. However, what this study showed is that if the blinking light was white, it actually drew attention. There wasn't this kind of avoidance reaction. So I read this study and I said, okay, people are bypassing the Frito-Lay aisle because they're going directly to the hot dogs. So what do I do to bring them into the aisle? Blinking white light. That's what I'm going to do. So what I did was I went to a Kinko's and I created a strip here, a shelf strip, and you'll see here right here, beat hunger with Doritos. Winning never tasted so good. And if you see that little sound clip, I actually put in a small blinking light. Now, this is a small test store that was in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It was only one store, but I wanted to run an experiment. It was super cheap for me to do. I went to Kinko's and did it for like $70. So I put this blinking white light in there and boom, I turned on the 9-volt battery and all of a sudden the white light starts blinking and I let that thing run for a week. We had access to the data, and a week later, I found out that that blinking white light was in fact driving, with all of the variables consistent, we're driving more people, at least according to the sales data, more people were buying chips off of this rack. So I'm like, wow, it worked. So here's what I did. I took this nudge, because that's all it really was. I read about this idea of a blinking white light could draw people's attention. And I said, I'm not going to do it once. I'm going to do it 3 times. So I put another shelf strip below it and a third shelf strip below it. And I had 3 blinking white lights thinking, okay, if I drove some people into the aisle, I'm going to drive 3 times that number if I hit 3 different lights. And a week later, I saw that sales tanked. So at that point, I'm like, holy cow, I just actually hurt the business by doing this nudge. And so what I did was I took off the 2 remaining strips. I went back to the original plan, just 1 strip and the blinking white light. About a week later, it did drive some more sales. And then all of a sudden, everything just kind of fell apart. It all just went back to normal. So what I learned from this is that I wasn't really solving a problem when I put a nudge and I put a blinking white light. I think today, a lot of times we think that, we hear about these nudges or behavioral economics and this idea we may read into a book. And that's all I did was I read a study that told me that white light would bring people in and you deploy that. The problem with that is that a nudge is not a behavioral model. It is a tactic. It is a trick in many cases. You can debate me on that. That's fine. But at the end of the day, I think what's really critical for us to do is first start with a behavioral model. Now, there's lots of great models out there. There's the reasoned action model. There's the BJ Fogg model. There's a Mindstate behavioral model. There's the Hook model. There's the BCOM model. There are all sorts of different models that you can use. Now, here's why a model works so well for you. If you want to get creating, or if you want to create actionable research, start with a behavioral change model. Why? Well, by definition, if you're going to start with a model that's been kind of designed to change human behavior, the outcome should be a change in human behavior. So right from the definition, just by using this, you should be closer to coming out with actionable insights just by filling in the model. So, and what's more important is when you can fill out a model, you can actually test variables. So I showed you here the habit loop. That's Charles Duhigg's model from the book Habit. And so in this case, let's just say that you were using this model. I don't care what model you use, but let's just say you wanted to drive habitual behavior, right? For your products. So you went to this model and you said, okay, I'm going to follow his model. And what you know is there are 4 different parts of the model. There's a cue to the model. There's also then a craving of some kind. Then there's a response, and then there is a reward. So let's say you're going to say, okay, I want you to go and figure out how to create a habit. Well, now what you do is do research to fill in these boxes. So first off, for cue, how do I know that the cue is going to be obvious? Go do research to figure out what the cue is and is it obvious? Craving, how do you make that idea, your product, craveable in some way? So you could actually do research in the same piece of research. You could talk to people about what makes this craveable. You could do the same thing with how do we make the response easy? You could do research to figure that out, and then you can make it satisfying. You could do research to figure out how do we make the reward as great as can be? Then you can deploy it. And if you find out that, you know what, something's not working, we're not getting habitual behavior, you now have a model that you can go back to and figure out, where did we break the process? That's why a model is so useful versus a nudge. I did not know how to fix when the blinking white light started driving sales down for my category. I didn't know how to fix it because I wasn't really using a model. I was using a nudge, a kind of an idea, a trick. This is why using a behavioral model is really, really critical for you to use. So the second strategy I have for you here is simplify the science. Now, I learned this from Capital One. So early, right after I started my first company, Trigger Point, I went and I was trying to figure out how to, get the business started. And I just so happened that I ran into, or somehow I was introduced to somebody by the name of Kathy Bendall. She's still one of my favorite researchers of all time. And she was helping me. She was a lover of behavioral economics, and she wanted to bring my company, Trigger Point, into Capital One. And so what she was doing was she was trying to coach me basically on helping me to get projects adopted, because this is so new. This is back in 2013. So there's a lot of people out there that didn't know anything about behavioral sciences. We were using terms like System 1 and System 2. And all she knew was there was a lot of power in behavioral science research. So for me, I was a brand new business. I'd never done this before. So I wanted to sound credible. So what I started to do was I started to use words because I wanted to sound smart. We all want to sound smart. We want to sound competent. So, in our whole research industry is frankly full of these words like implicit association, ZMET, cognitive heuristics, jobs to be done. We have these really kind of important sounding words that we want to come into our clients and talk to them about. Or maybe you're an internal researcher and you want to talk to your brand manager about a methodology called a ZMET, or maybe that you're going to understand cognitive heuristics. Here's when one day we're on a phone call and she said, Will, stop talking about heuristics. Stop using that term. I think from memory, she said, you're not helping your cause. And what she told me was that basically every time I came into a meeting and I had these all in my proposals, my emails or whatever, I was losing the audience because though they meant something to me, they meant nothing to the audience. So simplifying the science is really, really critical. If you want to go to the very top of that consulting where, that little 2x2 matrix I told you about, or I showed you, where you have trust with your brand manager, you are their conciliary, right? They are with you. They want you in every meeting. You have to build trust. And what behavioral sciences are very clear is this: simple language and simplifying ideas builds trust. Big, wordy ideas, very complex systems and models, which I know are academically sound, they don't build trust because frankly, your brand managers don't want to learn how to become behavioral designers. They don't want to do that. What they do want to do is build their brand. So the simplest ideas are the ones that work best. So here's what I did. I started going through my decks and all of my work, and I started looking at saying, okay, rather than calling something a heuristic, I'm going to start calling them triggers. And rather than using the word motivation, I'm going to start calling those desires. Jobs to be done, I started talking about goals, and regulatory fit, I started to talk about approach. Now, for the purists out there that are looking at this, you are cringing, and I get it. This still to this day makes me cringe. But frankly, our ideas don't get adopted unless we use language that is simple and easy to understand, even if we miss the little bit of a nuance that we think. So I took the exact same tactic when I published my book, Marketing to Mind States, and became a bestseller. And not because the ideas are better than anyone else's or even smart in many cases. Like there are brilliant books that are behind me and over here that I think are way smarter than my book. But if you go to Amazon and you look at the reviews, you will see again and again how actionable it is. People are they're applying the concepts in the book because I don't talk like Kahneman, because I try to bring these ideas to life in a way that is applicable and easy to understand. So simplify the science. The third strategy I have for you would be provide blueprints. And I learned this on a project from a company called Principal. You would know them, Principal Financial. So here's the situation. This was a couple of years after my book, maybe a year after my book was published. And I got an email from a person on a marketing team that was internal to Principal. So they've been working on email marketing for a while. And somebody on this team is 4 people, is a really small team. And somebody from the team had suggested, why don't we go through the book, Marketing to Mind States, go through the activities so we can increase the response on our emails. Cool. So they did all this work by themselves. They sat down with the book, they did the activities. And at the very end of the book, there's a way of identifying, using the activities in that book, a psychological mind state to go message against. So they did it. So then they emailed me, and all they really wanted, they didn't know I had a research company. They didn't know anything. All they knew was that, hey, I'm an author. Could I at least hear what they did? Just say yes or no. Did I agree with their conclusions? So they get me on a phone call. I kind of agree with their conclusions. They did an awesome job. I was like, you don't need me. You don't need any research, really. They really, really did well. So at the very end of the book, there's an appendix. And in the appendix of the book, you can get these mind state profiles. And these profiles, I think, are really good. I think they're really actionable. People from the reviews say these are really actionable. So I'm looking at these profiles. I can tell they're like, but we don't know exactly how to take that profile and do anything with it. And it dawned on me that we kind of have like this. I gave them a puzzle, if you will, right? And I helped them solve the puzzle. I gave them at least a little bit of a picture because at the very end of this puzzle, right, they were figuring out their mind state. And they got this profile. But really what we didn't do for them, and it didn't occur to me until I'm listening to them talk about it, we didn't make a clear blueprint. We didn't give them the box of the puzzle and say, now that you have the pieces, you have those insights, here's how you put them together. So I walked away from this initiative saying it's not enough. Like they don't exactly know what to do, though it's very clear to me because in behavioral design, there's many, many studies and experiences that tell us what to do with these insights. So what I did was I started creating a blueprint, and I would suggest that you should follow a blueprint, create a blueprint, something, because this translates those insights into things that are actionable for the people who are going to use those insights, your brand managers, your business leaders, et cetera. And what I did was I thought to myself, a blueprint should be comprised of 3 parts. The first one would be driving human empathy, because I believe that just building intuition into an organization can help you it can help you lower your research costs, because if you have a deep intuition for your customer, you don't always have to do so much research. So at a minimum, I thought, let's go and build slides and information around empathy, around that mind state. Then, of course, I wanted a part on brand strategy and activation. And here's all I did is I basically pulled these things together to create blueprints. And so now, see that mind state persona overlay here on this very first slide here. This is basically what you get in the back of a book that costs, $9, right? So what I want to do is bring above and beyond that new insights or new stuff that I knew. So what I did was I created slides around how would the customer want to be treated? So in this case, acknowledge your competence, provide expert guidance, giving them informative communications. Also built out a personality profile. If you're into personality profiles, is the Ocean personality profile. I created slides on what's the goal to activate when they're trying to make a decision. What's that motivation that's driving them to take on that action? Here's their approach for framing up your copy. Here are possible triggers or cognitive heuristics to use, feelings to evoke. Then for brand strategy, I started creating slides around, here's part of the blueprint for what's your brand personality and how should you position your brand if somebody in this case was in the optimistic competence mind state. And then looked at content strategy and built out slides for content strategy, built out the brand archetype. So what's the brand archetype that would be kind of exciting for a new user to buy, right? So what is that person who wants to buy your product? What type of brand are they looking for? And then as it relates to activation, visual guidance, example copy and taglines, copy guidance, example CX and UX strategies. So here's the idea here, is that this stuff was kind of intuitive to me, but it's not intuitive necessarily to your researchers if you're a consultant out there. And it's certainly not intuitive to a designer who's never heard of this behavioral model that you're using. So what I want you to consider is build a blueprint, whatever that looks like for you, but build a map or build, that puzzle picture so that when somebody's trying to put these pieces together, they know what to do. This is what helped Principal take this work that they did on their own. We provided them a blueprint later on, and then all of a sudden they increased. I think they doubled their conversion rates on their emails because they actually had guidance. So if you want to make your insights actionable, create a blueprint for people to follow. The fourth thing, I know we're going quick, but we got a half hour, is tweak the familiar. I learned this actually from doing a project on the Shopper Insights team or Shopper Activation team at Kellogg's. A couple of years ago, they basically had us come in and do a lot of work around understanding the shopper and then also using these behavioral science principles to help them tweak their activation or change their activations or in-store communications so they can drive more penetration of the brands, more sales, et cetera. So we did a massive amount of work. I love this work. It's one of my favorite projects ever. And we actually provided these blueprints. And so we're sitting there and we're in this big workshop and we're sitting there and we're presenting out the blueprints, and you can just feel the energy in the room has dropped dramatically. And I don't know why. I'm thinking this is good stuff. And hopefully we're being exciting. We're telling stories. We're showing videos of shoppers, et cetera. And what happened was there's total low energy. And after the meeting, so the meeting didn't go well. After the meeting, I was told from my client or my contact that, well, they wanted to use these insights for back to school, and the back to school is only 6 weeks away. In that case, these insights, even with a blueprint, they felt overwhelming. And basically, the agency was thinking, we're about to blow up their work because they've already gotten concepts in place. They've got renderings in place. And so how do we get an idea accepted when people have already been working towards it? How do you convince them that we're not going to blow up what you're doing? Tweak the familiar. See, with behavioral insights, I know you get deep insights. The problem with deep insights is sometimes they're not applied because they feel overwhelming. So what I did was I learned from this book. It's called System 1, Unlocking Profitable Growth. Great company out there. They do amazing research. And they wrote this book a couple of years ago. And what they do is they come up with this idea called the fluent innovation. It's chapter 2 of the book if you're interested. See, fluent innovation. And in this, what they do is they say the best innovations, the innovations that most often take off, is that if they follow an 80% familiar, 20% new rule. So I love this quote. The lesson is clear. If you want something to succeed, you have to make it familiar and therefore easy for System 1 to process quickly and offer just an element of novelty. Here's what I was doing in that Kellogg's meeting. I had this blueprint and I was saying, here's how you have to change your marketing research. And your activations. And there are 20 pages of recommendations and tweaking of this and priming that. It seemed overwhelming. It was over the top. And so nobody wanted to follow that. The brand manager certainly wasn't going to do that because they're 6 weeks out. So I started thinking to myself, rather than doing fluent innovation, could I do idea fluency? So here's what I did. It's rather than coming back and saying, here are all these massive recommendations I think you should do. And then actually I even offered to recreate or create activations that would be based upon those blueprints. Here's what I did. I asked them, can you just send me one of your renderings? In fact, I had them sending me about 10 of their renderings. So this is a prototype. I don't know if this was even ever used. And what I did was I said, okay, let me take what you're currently moving forward with, or at least you're moving in that direction. In this case, this kind of this wedge here. And I went in and I just hired a graphic designer, relatively cheap to do. And I asked them, can you modify what they're currently doing with mine that has some behavioral science insights? And in this case, we did the after. So the current activation, I took that same, and all I did was I just tweaked it. All I did was just tweak the familiar. In this case, you can see rather than save $1, say get $1 off. We wanted to highlight the experience because these people were driven by the engagement motivation. You see where I'm going. So what I wanted to do is show them, and I just delivered all these different executions back within a couple of days to show them that for them to activate in the insights, I'm not going to blow up their campaign, their back to school campaign. We could just tweak little things, enlarge certain images, change the copy on things, and we can actually make a big difference. So my idea here is when you're going to do behavioral science research, give them more enthusiasm by showing them that they don't have to change everything. Use the 80-20 rule. 80% of the ideas, make them useful and familiar. 20% of the idea are new and they're going to be adopted. It's a very core behavioral science principle because frankly, we don't oftentimes like new things. People in general don't like new things. They just want to barely, kind of move in a positive direction for the most part. 80% familiar, 20% new. And the last strategy I have for you here is go along for the ride, right? Be along for the ride. I learned this from an agency, an advertising agency called 121 Latam. They're out of Peru, and they hired us to do some behavioral design work because they want to move into the behavioral design space. They want to be an agency that applies behavioral science principles. Now, the owner was a big believer in behavioral design, but frankly, a lot of his company, it's a big company too, they're not really sold in necessarily. Certainly not the head of creative, which is a big deal if you're going to be a behavioral design firm. So what they did was they hired us and they commissioned a beta project, a small project that they were working on a bank that they were doing work for. And they asked us to basically come do a little bit of research and then present out the results. And what we figured out, we did some really quick research for them and we kind of worked together to do this. We looked at all the reports, we figured out the mind state. And then when we delivered the reports, it was very clear giving the agency a workshop was not going to cut it. And I know this is what we do in Insights all the time. We think that the best way to activate on something is an ideation workshop. When frankly, innovation, ideation makes sense a lot of times. But oftentimes a workshop is just not going to be enough. It's a point in time. We all get together and we find out that, we kind of act like we're moving ideas along and a bunch of those ideas or a bunch of those things that we all agree to do, they don't get done. So basically, the agency owner says, we can't just do a workshop for our internal teams. That's not going to change the culture. It's not going to get the ideas adopted. So what I started doing, thinking about, okay, so this is a whole new concept, behavioral design. And we told them a model. We talked about our model. We gave them copies of the book for them to follow. Started thinking, well, what other areas in life are people given brand new information, very complex things, and they get together and they work together to learn about them and then apply them to their lives. What dawned on me, and maybe this is pretty clear to you, you're going here, I started thinking about an MBA case study. So for you out there who've done an MBA case study, you probably know the work where you get together with a team and you actually work together over the course of a period of time to work out the case study. And you go get information, you work together, you tweak some things, you keep going back and forth until you solve the problem. So here's what we did. We created what we call the Mindstate Partnership Program. I'm not suggesting you create something like this. I am suggesting that you may want to create something that allows you to be along for the ride. So here's what we did. We structured a program for that we could teach his internal creative teams. We structured it like an MBA case study. So just like an MBA course, we made it an 8-week program to activate in the insights. So what we did is we worked as a team. We had a marketing researcher on the team, strategy from their team, designer from their team, and a copywriter from the team. And every week, it took about 90 minutes of activities where they were asked to do weekly readings from the book, Marketing Mind States. We created videos for them and a case study to follow along. We asked them to do individual activities because I think it's important when you're going to ask people to adopt a new idea. Sometimes the best way to get that idea adopted is have them place and use that idea for themselves. Don't even think about the business. In this case, we started talking to them about how to use this idea for healthy eating. We did a group activity, or each week, a group activity to help them work on a specific problem to solve. And then we had weekly office hours, 1 hour a week. We open up the office hours for people to come in and then talk to us about what was working, what wasn't working, etc. Like I said, there's a lot to this. I don't suggest you have to do this. I do know that once I did this one time, I now had something that I could share with any of my clients moving forward. In this case, to build like this idea, we wanted to be along for the ride with our client. In this case, it took its kind of road, if you will, of being with them for 8 weeks, using videos and live courses. So ultimately, this is it. 5 strategies to make your behavioral research findings more actionable. Follow a behavioral model, simplify the science, provide blueprints, tweak the familiar, and be along for the ride. So thank you very much for coming. I have a free gift for you guys just so you guys know. So first off, hey, listen, thank you so much. Hey, if you want like new, smart, actionable behavioral science insights, reach out to me. You see my information down there, will.leach@mindstategroup.com. And I just want to let you know that, we're talking about behavioral models. And when doing the work for this webinar, I actually created a new ebook. It's called Decoding Human Behavior, the top 4 consumer behavioral models used in marketing research. What this ebook is going to do is going to tell you about the 4 models, when they should be used, when they shouldn't be used, pros and cons, what they do for you as a brand marketer, what they do for you as a marketing researcher. So you guys will get a copy of that. That'll be coming along in an email probably later on this afternoon or Monday. Outside of that, hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate you attending, and hope you guys have a great, actionable end of your day. Take care.